Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Strategic Source webinar. Topic, as you see on the screen, is Recapture Your Credit Card Expense Without Disrupting CSI. Let's bring on our CEO here at Strategic Source, Doug Austin, for some opening comments. Doug, take it away.
Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending today. We've got another good session today. We've got Amberly Joseph, Managing Partner of DMS, going to speak about the new opportunities on the credit card side. Just let me back up for a second. We have a continuing series of innovative suppliers that we've started in June of this year. So virtually every 2 weeks, we're bringing on folks that we have vetted and oftentimes quoted and negotiated with, who we know to be pretty innovative and competitive suppliers. So we're presenting these webinar sessions across different expense categories, audit and recovery categories, and then also new revenue opportunities for the folks that attend. So we're excited to have Amberly today. She's working with a few of our clients already. We've had good results, and we're happy to bring her to you. So with that, I'm going to back up the slide, get my face off this camera. I'm talking to you from a remote location in Fort Lauderdale today, so don't judge my background. Thanks very much. Go ahead, Amberly.
Thanks, Doug. So glad to be here. I'm just going to jump right in, and we'll have lots of opportunity for questions at the end. But the most important thing today basically is what we're going to talk about. What is dual price strategy? How does it work? Most importantly, what about CSI, and how can I implement it successfully? So before we get started, I want to give you a short history lesson, because the legal part of this is really what's most important and why we even get to have this conversation today. So you can see here that it started in 2010 with the Durbin Amendment, and it actually went all the way to the Supreme Court and basically said that businesses have a First Amendment right to be able to communicate to their customers that if they use another form of payment, they could save. So now we get all the way to this year, and 48 of the 50 states basically can allow surcharge. Colorado just went and passed theirs. Now, what's important to note there is Colorado only allows 2%. And so where we really thrive in all of this is to try to help you navigate through the compliance and legalese and all of it. This is where I tell you how great me and my team are, but really what's important to note is that we focus just on car dealers. And between the 3 people on our executive team, we have over 75 years in automotive experience. So what's also important to note is that my vice president is a former controller, and we joke with our dealers. We know that if the controller's not happy, nobody's happy. So she really works closely. She worked for Vantal as a controller and works very closely with the CFOs and the accounting department to make sure everything is handled and all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So I'd love to start with the first poll, because what we're trying to really build first and foremost is some awareness around how much you guys are spending and how much you guys could potentially save. I see a couple of votes coming in. So it looks like, from what we see, we've got a couple of votes almost for every single amount, but oftentimes we see that $7,500 to $10,000 per month is really an average on what we see. Yep, looks like 50% of the voters are there as well. So let's just jump right into how it works. So with a dual price strategy, all items, ROs, parts, invoices, and down payments have 2 prices, a cash price and a credit price. So anything that we consider a credit price is anything paid by a credit card. Anything that's considered the cash price is cash, check, or PIN debit. And one huge differentiator with us and maybe some of these other terms like cash discount that you've seen out there is that it's very, very important for your CSI to make sure that you give your customers a cash equivalent in an electronic option, and that's where the debit card comes in. So let me break it down for you. So right now, the average effective rate across dealerships is typically around 2%. And so if you have a $100 repair order, the customer pays you $100 currently. and you only keep 98 of those dollars. So with our program, the customer has the choice to pay with a credit card. They pay $103 for a $100 repair order, or the customer chooses to use their debit card and they pay $100. So the dealership keeps $100 of that $103 when it's used, when a credit card is used, because the customer pays all the processing costs. If the customer pays with a debit card, the dealership pays only 1%. So I think it's important here to note also is that your RO amount in your DMS doesn't have to change. So your prices don't change, nothing changes. The machine itself, the terminal, does all the heavy lifting. And the machines are backed by U.S. patent and the proprietary software to make that happen. The other most important question we get, aside from is it legal, is what are my customers going to think? And it's important to note that this has been going on for a while in gas stations, but also Venmo and PayPal are very, very common, and they have over 400 million consumers that use their platform. And if you've ever sent money via Venmo, you know that if you use a credit card, it's 3%, and if you use your bank account, you don't get charged the additional 3%. And so we really believe that over the last few years, consumers are conditioned for a change like this. And we had a big dealer group that said, look, we want to start with one store. We want to see how our customers react, and then we'll potentially move to our other 10 stores. And you can see I have his quote here, only a handful of people have even asked. The vast majority have accepted the change. And we see that oftentimes also in the younger consumers because they're so used to paying this way. Plus, you guys have done this before. I mean, shop supplies and dock fees are very synonymous to this type of strategy. And what's important to note, and we pulled it from a Ward's Auto article, is that by not managing the expense, you lose profits, and by not proactively explaining the expense, you lose customers. And that's exactly what we're going to help you do. So I have another poll. Were you an enthusiast or a skeptic as it pertains to dock fees and shop supplies? You know, I think it's important to note that, you know, this is definitely earlier on the adoption curve, but, you know, you guys have done this before. Did the poll? There we go. So I'd be curious to see when you launched dock fees, okay, enthusiasts, be the first one to try it. I met with a platform president yesterday, and he said as soon as we could charge it legally, we did it. We changed. So, okay, so we're about a third. We've got some enthusiasts on the front end. We've got some conservatives more on the back end. So fair enough. And I feel like as this consumer conditioning continues to shift, we'll see this a lot of places. We've even seen it at Marriott hotels, in Lifetime Fitness, that sort of thing. So the bigger businesses, even the smaller ones, are doing it. Perfect. I'm actually going to move that. So one thing I want to talk through is compliance. And it's really important for dealerships to make sure that they are fully in compliance. And we have actually a merchant attorney on retainer to make sure that we really try to stay, you know, ahead of the curve as this is constantly evolving. And what's really important is three major components as it pertains to compliance. First of all, you have to have a third-party processor handle this additional 3%, meaning that it has to be at an arm's length. The 3% has to come in, and the 3% has to go straight out. And more importantly, you at the store level cannot profit in any way on this 3%. And so you can't charge the customer 4 or 5% and then keep the spread on what you're currently paying for your processing. As well as there's a cap, right? 4% is the highest you could charge the customer regardless. And then signage. You need signage at the cashier and the entry point, and we will provide all that. We get your logo, and when we come on site and do the launch, bottom line is we'll come in with all the signage, make sure you are communicating it to the customer in the best way possible. You can even put it on your ROs, things like that. So we want to make sure you're fully prepared for all of those pieces. So let's talk a little bit about where we really feel like we shine. We come and do this on site. And so we have what's called Dealer Merchant Services University, and it's a micro-learning platform. And we're all used to micro-learning at this point. If you go to YouTube and watch a video to help you learn how to do something, it's the same thing. So we have 12 short 1-minute videos that explain exactly how the process works. We explain the equipment, the word track, the accounting, and this training also goes into perpetuity. So if the dealership signs new, hires new service advisors, they just have to send us an email and we'll launch them in our training. So we have training into perpetuity. And there's a little bit of magic behind that microlearning because before we ever get there, we know their feedback. We feel like they're more aware of what's going to happen while we're there. But also, if we have a service advisor that doesn't agree with the strategy, we also know that ahead of time and can handle it with a little more kid gloves. So, the training piece of it being both on-site, beforehand, on-site, during, all of that is really where we shine as it pertains to training. The other thing, too, is because we're all automotive, we have a couple of added value. These are totally optional, but we had a dealership that wanted a better way to communicate to their customers on the service drive ahead of time. And so we have a presentation worksheet. It basically just uploads all their opcodes and gives them a presentation right when they get there, and it shows them the cash price, credit price right up front. So it's a great added value to really be able to communicate that. And then if we also have a custom gift card program, if you ever have any customers that might give you some pushback, it's a good way to appease them and also keep them coming back. So I have another poll. Are you currently seeing these differences in price, this dual price strategy in your market? Yes, 100% yes so far. Any others? Just want to make sure. Oh, poll closed. So I've got 100% yes. So it looks like we're not the only ones seeing it, and so I think that only helps the adoption curve on this. So the most important piece of this is the expense control, right? You wouldn't go through a strategy like this if it really wasn't saving you a lot of money, and that's a big piece of it. And so what we like to do is, first things first, we want to look at your monthly merchant statements. We want to review those statements. They're typically very confusing on purpose. And we really want to see what your true net effective rate is. A lot of times you'll see that they have hidden fees, monthly fees, annual fees, regulatory fees, that sort of thing. But also, even with your current processor, you could just have new terminals. If you don't have a chip reader, it's costing you more. If you don't have a PIN debit option, it's costing you more. So we really want to educate everybody on how can you save, even if you don't go with us. There's going to be a price increase twice a year. They stalled it just a little bit because of COVID, but they absolutely anticipate next year that there will be two. But the cool thing about it is that once we are in the store and we launch this, you start saving immediately. So right out of the gates, your first month, you could save $8,000 to $10,000 right out of the gate. So let's talk about the investment, right? What does this cost me? So we become your new processor, and we charge 3% on the credit. 3% comes in, 3% goes straight out. That's how we become your processor as well as at an arm's length. And then you guys pay 1% on all PIN debit charges. So we take the risk on what the card brand usage is, meaning that we can't, for the 3% to come in, it has to be a flat rate so you guys don't profit from it. And then you will have to buy new terminals. And it's really important to note that these are your terminals. You buy them, and you don't have to lease them. They don't end up costing you $2,000 by the time your 3-year lease is up. But that's where the proprietary software is, and that's where the heavy lifting is going to happen. But oftentimes, you may see free terminals or this or that, but these are the brand new, tricked out terminals, Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. And what's important is that they're brand new. So some of these smaller, cheaper terminals are at the end of their life, and you may have to buy new terminals in a year anyway. So we do a $95 install on the terminals because they're completely custom to your store. And then there's a monthly software support. That's for the entire dealership. So if you have several rooftops under one merchant ID, that's only one charge. And then $10 a month for the terminal support as the software updates. I want to pause here and see if there's any questions, because those are really important to go through.
just letting everyone know that at the bottom of the Q&A box below the webcam image, there's a small frame at the very bottom. You can type in questions for us to field. And we can get to those also at the end of the webinar if that's more convenient, but that option is available at all times.
Sure. So client testimonials, listen, we know that dealers want to talk to other dealers. They want to know how it's working in their store. We also are one of the strategic source. We're actually the only vetted strategic source vendor that does this type of strategy that's actually currently working with strategic source clients. And one of them is here, Davidson. As you can see, everything went well for us. It was a great experience, and they've started to save an enormous amount of money already. And so we have plenty of people you guys can talk to and visit with and make sure, because every dealership's different on how they want to do things. So at the end of the day, happy to have you talk to any of our stores. So let's talk a little bit about the three-step process for implementation. It's really very simple. We try to keep it as simple as possible. So we find out how many terminals you need, and some dealers do, have their advisors self-checkout. Some have cashiers, all the different places that you might need one. And then we go through an underwriting process. And it's a very quick 3-page underwriting process application. And then we move on to pre-launch training. And so we want to find out everybody on your staff that needs to be trained, and they'll go through Dealer Merchant Services University. And then before we get there, we'll do an integration checklist. So make sure IT understands what we're doing, make sure accounting, we do a couple of test transactions. So when we get there, we're running live reports that they can understand, as well as making sure all of their needs as far as, are they going to be having cashiers handle it? Are there going to be gift cards? Are there going to be waiving of any fees, anything like that? And then from there, on-site launch. So we come to the store, we make sure everybody is fully understanding how it's going, and install both the machines, as well as working with everybody on the word track, watching live transactions, helping them fumble through just the initial couple of transactions to make sure they understand it. So really, right now, we've talked about a few things. We've talked about how my customers will react. And in the beginning, we understand new machines, new word track, new philosophy. So we kind of help you work through that and make sure, how my customers are going to react. In the first 30 days, those are kind of the toughest, just all new system. And then what are your legal requirements? Some states, like I mentioned, Colorado, the max that you can surcharge is 2%. And then how soon can we get started? It takes us about 3 weeks from soup to nuts. By the time we get your applications, we get everybody trained up, and then we get on site. So, we can do it faster, but typically just about 3 weeks is the perfect amount of time.
Amberly, this is Doug.
Yes,
question. Is that 3 weeks for one location, or if we're talking about a 5 or 6 store group, does that implementation take longer? Is that sequential or in total?
Really good question. I would say that oftentimes the groups have centralized accounting, and so whether it's 1 or 5, if it's centralized accounting, it can happen really quickly. But as long as we get the applications, we can process them quickly. They go through underwriting very quickly, and then we just have to get them into our training. So I really am confident with that 3 weeks that we can handle everything, whether it's, if you give me 28 stores, I'd maybe like 5 weeks just to make sure everybody's, all the boxes are checked. But for the most part, 3 weeks gives us plenty of time.
And my next question, and for now, excuse me, do you get much pushback from the staff, even though executive management says they want to do this? Is there much pushback from the staff? And if so, how do you deal with it?
So really good question. I would say that if any of the staff is paid on the net, we don't get very much pushback. But, you do have people on the front lines, and that's why we do the Dealer Merchant Services University and get their feedback ahead of time. Because, Doug, what's important about this? Why are we doing this, really? And why we're doing it is not just to stick it to the customer and charge them more. I mean, this is truly a cost of goods to the dealership. And what we're really trying to do is not have to raise the prices across the board 3%, but really give those debit card paying customers the option to save. And it's really about giving them options and making them feel empowered by those options. I would say that there certainly initially will be some of it, but we make sure with the feedback on the Dealer Merchant Services University that we know who's having an issue with it. But we also go back to why are we doing this? Maybe the dealership wants to raise their minimum wage, and that's a huge chunk of money for a store. Well, this is a way to counteract that big expense. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's really why are we doing this? It's to be able to give those cash and debit card paying those customers so that they're not subsidizing the credit paying customers. The prices are frankly just different because the cost of goods is different.
Thank you.
Of course. It looks like Jason is asking, those prices are per terminal. Yes, they're $350 per terminal, and you own them. And we typically see the savings recouped in the first 7 to 10 days on the program. Trevor, also you asked, does your system have the ability to prompt for and ultimately collect a donation to charity? We have been asked that before, and right now we don't have the capacity to do it, but we're working on it. Okay, I've got Travis question. How would you handle a situation where a customer is very unhappy with paying the 3% fee and they do not have a debit card or cash? Really, really good question. The first thing I want to say, though, is 87% of people carry a debit card. So the likeliness that they don't have a debit card is small, first things first. And how would we handle a situation where a customer is very unhappy? So you have a couple of options. One is if you chose to waive the fee. Now, you have the option to waive the fee if you choose to, or we can put it on the machines where you don't have the option to waive the fee. That's also why we like our gift card program, because you could give the customer a $10 or $25 gift card right there, and even another one for them to come back. Because here's the question. The most important question is the juice worth the squeeze? If we continue to give them an option, you can say, look, Mrs. Jones, we understand you've been coming here. You're a VIP client. We understand you've been coming for 15 years. It's a brand new policy, and certainly today we will discount this fee so you don't have to pay it. But next time, just keep it in mind when you come back to us. And here's a $10 gift card to pay for your fees for the next visit as well. So we feel like if you're overly generous when you need to be, you really just, what we like to say, keep the toothpaste in the tube. We never want to get them so frustrated where they're heated. You know, we really can squash it before anybody gets upset. Travis, did I answer that question, I hope? We try to navigate that. The other piece of it is it's really all about presentation. And so if we make sure that we're communicating to the customer ahead of time that $103 is your credit price and $100 is your debit price, how would you like to pay today? If we flip it on its head and make sure that they really do understand that they could save if they use a debit card and help them understand that we didn't raise our prices for everybody, then it's all about presentation in this particular instance. And if we can, and that's why we're on site, that's why they understand before we get there what we're trying to do, and we just try to have all hands on deck. One thing about us is we had a dealer tell us and describe it perfectly, is that we quarterback the process from start to finish. We're not going to send you a box of terminals and give you a 1-800 number and wish you best of luck, because that's just not how this is going to be successful. Let's see here. I want to make sure I'm answering all these questions.
Sure. Amberly, could I ask a question for you? Or
of
you? So we're ready to take on some additional questions for the Q&A time. Was there anything back as far as on the estimate sheet that you wanted to review for some main points?
Sure. Yeah, I would like to. This piece of it is pretty cool, and it's a presentation worksheet. And so what we do is when we get to the store, we upload all the opcodes, as I'd mentioned, and then before the customer, one big piece of it is people typically don't buy because they haven't been asked to. So when we present it all up front, why did they come into the store? What are their basic maintenance needs? And what are their time or mileage maintenance needs that we can upsell? And then ahead of time, right out of the gates, we're talking credit and debit price so they understand. And again, just this one piece of it helps. I mean, we have an enormous Toyota store here in Texas, and this is exactly what they wanted. We created it for them, and they've been wildly successful with it because they're presenting it as a savings if they use their debit card. Any other questions?
Yes, everyone, there's a Q&A box just beneath the webcam that you can type in a question. We have several to go over here, and but we'll field the main box too as we go through these that are already here. So here we go. How would someone get started?
Really good question. So we would just get their terminal count. We want to know how many terminals they currently have or need. They may be going to a self-cashiering option for their service advisors. So we get the terminal count, and then we do the underwriting process. No dealers have to personally guarantee it, but we do have to know, the information on the dealership and get the underwriting process going. And then, like I said, we do our pre-training, so our Dealer Merchant Services University. We take a lot of pride in this because this micro-learning platform is really what helps us before we get there. They're not glossy-eyed when we get there and don't understand what we're presenting. And just like, Travis or Doug had said, what if we have somebody an advisor that's not too happy about it? And this gives us an opportunity to really talk to them and work our way through it. We also have a refresher training. So after the first 10 days, we'll be all hands on deck, making sure everything's going okay. They've got cell phones and email addresses for us to be able to get in touch with us. And then from there, we do a 10-day audit. How much are you saving? Is it worth it? And then every 30 days after that, we'll be able to see and track all the savings that they've had. And again, training into perpetuity. So if they ever have another advisor, which we get emails all the time, hey, I've got a new advisor, can you add them? Yes, great, no problem. So getting started is easy, and then the savings is immediate. So really, if you give us a yes within 30 days, you could be saving about 75% of those fees.
Amberly, some of the some of the groups out here have multiple stores. They have a management team that might be, very important in terms of making a decision on this process. It may not be the decision of just one executive to move forward with this. Are you capable, are you willing to maybe do this presentation to corporate management teams of larger groups so that they can all be on the same page and be prepared to make a decision?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Doug, this isn't a one-call close type of a situation, right? We really have to get them comfortable with it. But frankly, if we don't have buy-in from everybody, if the service director isn't bought in, we don't want it to go. We want everybody bought in and to understand, right? And I understand that there are some of our CEOs that have said, look, this is a condition of employment for our dealership. If you can't get on board, you can work somewhere else. And then there's others that really want more of a team atmosphere going, look, why are we doing this? We had a big store building a body shop, and so that huge expense was about to come onto the books. And then they're wanting to raise minimum wage, and so those expenses. So this is one of the expenses that you can really see that will immediately have an impact, and you can immediately start to save. But absolutely, we're happy to get on a call and go through the numbers, but then the service directors want to talk to other service directors, right? The CFO wants to talk to another CFO. And so it's one of these things where we have to get everybody comfortable and make sure they really understand how it's going to work. At the same time, Doug, I would also tell you that it's relatively simple. And that's why we do the Dealer Merchant Services University, is that before we get there, everybody has a level of understanding of what's about to go down.
Good. All right, good.
Yep.
Here's another question here that we have a few, but let's ask the next one here. Can we talk to some of your existing clients for references?
You bet. I would say that, you can definitely talk to our other SSI clients. We take a lot of pride in our strategic source relationship and making sure they're well taken care of. I think we did get some nice feedback to one of the SSI employees that said this vendor did exactly what they said they were going to do. And, that means a lot to us. We take a lot of pride in that. So we welcome it, as a matter of fact, because, again, they want to know exactly how it works. And we have big groups. And so, Doug, just like you asked, if you've got a big group, they want to know exactly how it's going to roll out from start to finish with a group. And depending on where the stores are geographically located, we had an 11-store group that it took us a full week to get on site to all the stores, but some of them were a couple of hours away. So we can get it done and make sure it all goes smoothly. That's the most important piece of it.
Great. Thank you, Amberly.
Here's a question. Can I implement the dual price program for only one of my departments and not for others, such as charging a surcharge only for sales and not service?
Sure, it's a great question. Every dealership, we can do it completely custom. We have some stores that if they want to start in sales, and typically we see it's the easiest flow as it pertains to down payments. People know these big amounts, are just a big number, and so they're kind of used to that 3% surcharge and fee on top of that. But if they want to start just in finance, they can do that and then move into service. That's no problem. I would also say that there's really no risk. I mean, if for some reason in 6 months you call me and say, Amberly, I don't particularly like this strategy, I'd like to go back, that's no problem. We just flip you back to traditional processing and match whatever you were paying before or beat it if we can, and that's what we've done. First of all, we have a 96% retention rate, so people stay on board, and part of that percentage was a dealership that was purchased, so they already had a processor in place. But we did have a Mercedes store that started with the dual price strategy, and they decided that they just wanted to stick with traditional for service for right now until it became more common. And so absolutely, we can customize it for the store and make sure that exactly how you want to roll it out, we can do it.
Amberly, this is Doug again. That brings up another good question. Are you seeing certain franchise types that are more willing to consider this than others? Is it limited to low-cost OEMs, low-cost franchises, or I guess one of the concerns I had is maybe high-end franchises may not be open to this kind of strategy. Have you seen that?
So I would say that I would pause on the high-end luxury stores until it becomes a little bit more common as it pertains to service. I think that most of the manufacturers, absolutely, but at the same time, we just had a call with a jet company, and they're charging because there are an enormous amount of fees involved. So I would say I would press pause on the luxury as it pertains to service.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody else, I have not seen any issues. We've got manufacturers across the board: Subaru, Volvo, Volkswagen, Toyota, Ford, Chevy, Chrysler. I mean, everybody, and there's no issue as far as that goes. A Ferrari store, okay, a Mercedes store, and service, I would press pause.
Okay.
Here is a question. Do the systems integrate with DMS? They have AutoMate.
Jason, great question. Right now, we don't have any DMS integrations because we frankly don't need it, but we are working on some just to make it a little easier. We work with accounting, and all of that 3% is calculated in a separate column. And again, I spotlight Laura because she's a former controller, so she works with the controllers, the CFOs, and making sure everything is copacetic. But I would say that down the road, we're definitely going to keep moving forward on integrations, but the only major benefit to having an integration is that it closes out the ticket, and it has the 3%. Other than that, though, all the reporting, everything that happens, we handle helping the accounting department with all of that. So the integration really isn't necessary.
Right, here's another. How much is the, did you want to make another point, Amberly?
Well, Trevor had mentioned, does this only work on physical in-person transactions, or will it remote transactions via text-to-drive? So text-to-drive is coming, and I would say that right now it's all in-person transactions, but again, it's constantly evolving, and so right now it's all the in-person transactions.
Here's one. How much is the estimating software?
The estimating software is $6.99 a month, and we go in, we upload all of your opcodes, and we work through it with you, but it's one of these great tools that not only does it help you sell more, but it really helps communicate that cash price, credit price to the customer. And the presentation is key in all of it. So it's just a great tool. It is the step in the beginning that really helps communicate it to the customer right out of the gate. Travis, I see another question. What is the average percent that your clients save on their credit card processing spend when they make the switch? We typically see anywhere between 70 and 72%, and that really depends on how many customers move over to that debit card option. And you will get, 30, 40% moving over to that credit card, the debit card piece of it, and so that's really your only expense as it pertains to that. So a huge chunk, 70 to 75. 72 is kind of that magic number we land on. And we'll be able to audit those over time so they can see their savings.
So Amberly, and I know this is an estimate, but if you look at a typical single point dealer, 50 million to 100 million, somewhere in that range, what kind of dollars, annual dollars, do you think you're going to save? I understand the 72%, but let's put it into dollars. Do you have any estimates on that?
Of course. So first things first, I'd love to put it out there that if you want to type in the Q&A or the chat box to analysis, we would love to run some numbers specifically for your store. What we found is we definitely don't want to speculate as it pertains to how much they are currently spending. We've had dealers say, oh, I'm probably spending $5,000 to $6,000, and it turned out they were spending $18,000, right? So that's the first thing, is we want to get a true number on what they're actually spending. We typically see anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000 per month per rooftop. I've got a big 13-store group in the state of Texas, and their big stores, they will save over $2 million in the next 3 years. So again, the bigger the number of the stores, the more the savings, right? And we see anywhere between 5 and 15 per month per rooftop.
Good. Thank you.
And here's another. How do you, DMS, make money?
Great question. So we become the processor, and we take the risk on all the card brand usage. So 3% is the credit price, 1% is the debit price, and we take a percentage of the spread. And so part of that percentage goes to our processor, and part of it goes to us. And we take the risk. There's over 400 different interchange rates. So as you all probably know, American Express are the most expensive. But all the different card brands cost a different interchange rate. So if you look at your current statement, it's really confusing. But we take the risk on whatever that card brand usage is. So we become your processor and handle all those pieces of it, and that's how we make our money. We don't make our money on any of the other things. They're all pass-throughs as far as the software costs and those sort of things, but we become the processor. That's how we make our money. So really, it's no risk.
Everyone, you can still ask questions. We're at about 20 to the hour. We have some time for answering more questions. We'll keep an eye in that box. When you're ready, here, Amberly, I'll bring up the post-session survey. While you and Doug conclude, I'll bring that up. We'd love to get everyone's feedback on the content today, and we just have a short 3-question survey for you to come up momentarily, but I'll wait for that to be ready and all the questions answered. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring that up.
Could I ask, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask one question. I think it might have been the last poll, but I'd love to know where, after learning about this, where they fall on that scale of adoption curve. I don't know if we could go back to that, but maybe they could just put it in the chat box as far as how they feel about it now on the adoption curve. All across the board, it looks like. All across the board. Perfect. Do you feel like I answered all the questions for your team and for your dealers? I just want to make sure I arm them with all the right education. You know, we've had dealers ask, well, why can't I do this myself? You know, it's important to note that, again, you have to have a third-party processor at an arm's length handling this for you. You have to make sure we talk to a big dealer group that was just charging them and keeping the difference, and that's a big-time no-no. And so they can't keep the profit. It's very clear as far as how that goes. So it's really important for us to make sure they understand and are educated, because if they start to do it wrong, it only makes the rest of us look bad, right? So we really want to make sure they're fully educated. And just like you asked, Doug, we're always happy to get on a call and understand, you know, state by state, help them understand how it works.
Okay, good. I think we probably had, we've done a number of these sessions now with suppliers. I think this is probably number one in terms of questions asked. So you did a great job, Amberly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
So David, do you have everything you need there on the survey?
Yeah, I have it up there for everyone just to give their quick feedback before you leave. You spent 45 minutes with us. We'd love to get your feedback on this, and it's helpful to us also as we do our webinars and make them as well as they possibly can be made. So I have my part here done. Any closing comments, Doug and Amberly?
Yeah, let me, if you would, Amberly, go ahead. But Dave, can I get back to the slides, please?
Yes, absolutely. Let me head back.
Amberly, go ahead and close it out, and then I'll bring up the rear.
Sure. I think that's my contact info. I'm on LinkedIn, email, cell phone, text, smoke signal, whatever you need. Get in touch with me. I'm happy to hop on a call with your CFO or controller, answer any questions. Again, you know, have you talk to some of our other dealers. But please reach out, and, you know, we'd love to help. And, again, if you want me to do an analysis, if you want to type in the Q&A or the chat analysis, I'd be happy to get in touch with your CFO and get those numbers. It's important that we don't speculate, so I'd love to find out some actual numbers for the dealers that were involved today.
Okay. Well, I really want to thank Amberly and her team. I think, again, this is probably the most questions we've ever had in a session, but it's a fairly new strategy, and to some dealers, it's a change, and sometimes change doesn't come easy, especially when we're talking about CSI scores. So, Amberly, I thought you did a great job. For all of you attendees,
Thank you.
Again, if you're interested in getting an assessment or estimate of what your potential savings would be, certainly reach out to Amberly, and her team can get that to you. As it relates to the webinar today, if you'd like a copy of the webinar, we'll be happy to send you a recorded MP4 version. David will have that after the session, probably late tonight, be available tomorrow. We'd be happy to send that off. If you're not a client of Strategic Source, if you joined us for the first time today, if you're interested in other expense categories, other strategies that can help reduce your expenses, we've got a number of we've got a sourcing team that did 2,000 projects last year and generated about 27% cost savings for our client base. So I have the ultimate confidence that we can help you. We have experience across 160 different categories. So if you're interested in learning more about us, reach out to Chris Austin at the phone number there, 612-386-3898. We're happy to get in touch with you and tell you a little bit more. If you're a client of ours, a lot of my client service managers are on this call today. They can answer questions, and if they can't, reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you as well. But in either event, we're very pleased that you joined us today. Thank you for your time. By the way, the webinar that we're doing today will also be on our website, as well as all the others that we've done. So if you're interested in this or other topics, hit the Strategic Source website and you can access the file there. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time. David, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Amberly, and thank you, everyone, for attending today. And we look forward to you joining us on future webinars with Strategic Source. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much.